Coal has done nothing but rape, ravage, and steal from Harlan County. It's made 10 people multi-trillion millionaires and 10,000 eat up with black lung and died. I watched my father die, choked to death, smothered to death. I watched my father-in-law smothered to death. I watched my grandfather die with black lung and stuff. No, coal has not been good to me.
Don Blankenship is one of those trillion millionaires. He was CEO of coal giant Massey Energy from 2000 to 2010. It was a reign that got him dubbed the Dark Lord of Coal Country by Rolling Stone. Blankenship became known nationwide, particularly after an explosion at Massey's Upper Big Branch mine in West Virginia in April 2010, which killed 29 miners. It was the worst domestic coal mining accident in 40 years. Multiple investigations faulted Massey for the blast, citing the failure of the company's safety systems, a finding Don Blankenship has disputed in a documentary he released earlier this year. The company that bought Massey agreed to a settlement of more than $200 million in connection with the criminal investigation into the explosion. And Don Blankenship joins me now. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. If someone wants to know the truth about what happened at UBB, they need to go to ubbneveragain.com and watch the documentary.
The comment there from that retired coal miner, Carl Shoup, what's your response to that?
Well, I think that what I watched from the time I was born in Appalachia in 1950 all the way through was a country that became the strongest country in the world on the back of coal. And people did make a sacrifice to mine the coal, but it provided the electricity and the steel and so forth that made this country the great country that it is.
It did provide energy, but specifically if you look at the places that we would call coal country where coal is mined, it's striking how poor they have been for how long they have been, while people like yourself and others, I mean, you made millions of dollars while you're the head of Massey Energy, how profitable it has been for the people that run those companies.
Well, it's been very profitable for the people that work there, too. Coal miners today make $30 an hour in many cases, which is probably twice the national average. And, you know, the coal has been, like I say, a vital part of the country for a very long time.
They also take on a tremendous amount of risks. I mean, the only reason they make $30 an hour is because there was so much unionization that was fought for, so much regulation that was fought for, all tooth and nail against a coal industry that at every turn didn't want any of that, right?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think the coal industry pays people because the coal business is a very complicated, high-technical business. I think it's a disgrace to say that the miners only get paid for the risk because they're very skilled electricians, very skilled
but it was
workers.
not paying people very well before they unionized. I mean, you could chart this out, right? I mean, they didn't pay people like they were skilled back in the day. They started paying them once the United Mine Workers and John Lewis got together and started calling strikes.
I don't think that any industry in this country paid as well in the 50s, 60s, 70s as they paid later on. I mean, it's just a progression of wages. But if you want to know the real truth about coal, go to SaveTheCountry.com and watch what's going on in China and how important coal is to the world's development and how important it's going to be. Coal is very important.
Let me ask you this. You talk about how it powered the U.S. during this period of growth. Given how dangerous it is, given the fact that anywhere between 50,000 people a year die from poor air quality just here in the U.S., many more in China, much of that from the things that come out of coal when it's burned. If tomorrow I told you we could swap out all the coal in America with solar and wind, you would think that would be good, right?
I think if you could use renewables completely and provide reliable energy at a low cost, it would be good. But I think that you fail to consider the trade-offs. The cost of not having coal would be very high as well. There's always trade-offs, and if you watch SaveTheCountry.com, you'll see what they are.
What would be the... But first, the first part of that, I'm surprised to hear you say that. So if we get to the point where it's scalable, price competitive, and you can implement it, you say if you can swap out a BTU of coal for solar, that's great.
Well, you added a big element to that, but if wind and solar and other renewables were competitive, it would be a different story than what it is.
Well, they are in 10 states right now.
Well, they're competitive if they're subsidized, but you know there's a lot of problems with wind and solar.
They're unsubsidized competitive in almost 80 countries. They're competitive in about 10 countries. Plus, we're subsidizing coal up the wazoo by allowing all this carbon to go in the atmosphere and not taxing it.
Well, again, if you go to SaveTheCountry.com, you'll see that what you're saying is not true. So, you know, if the world was going to be in trouble because of carbon emissions, it's going to be in trouble because of carbon emissions. The Chinese are up to 4 billion tons, which is 4 times what the US
This is such
does.
an interesting thing that I've encountered. People that for a long time denied the science of climate.
I still do.
Right, you still do. Have now switched to saying, well, China's going to burn the coal anyway. Like, when did that switch happen?
Well, it happened when the United States stagnated on coal and China went up 400% in carbon emissions. And the problem we've got is there's a trade-off. You know, you could do the story that you're doing on coal in Pittsburgh about steel. You could do it in Ravenswood, West Virginia about aluminum. You could do it in North Carolina about textiles. You could do it anywhere in the country about nearly any industry. We have not
Gary, Indiana with steel.
Yeah, we have not had any increase in the demand for industrial electricity in this country since the Clean Air Act passed in 1990. You got 42,000 factories shut down. You got 20-some more million people on food stamps.
You think that's because of the Clean Air Act?
I think it's partially because of the Clean Air Act and free trade.
Come
on. You know, I believe in the math. The free trade and the EPA rules make it almost impossible for an American worker to have any chance in this country.
20 years from now, we played that clip of tobacco people saying, I don't believe it's addictive. You're going to look like that 20 years from now. That's the way Don Blankenship's going to look. Like, how do you think about what your legacy is going to be 20 years from now?
I think our legacy will be that we made it possible for the country to be very strong and to be the superpower of the world and to have the best quality of life in general of any place in the world.
And you don't think that history is going to look poorly on on the things you've said?
I think that the history will look upon it as what we needed to do. Coal miners didn't go out and try to destroy the environment. They were providing energy for a country that needed the energy.
It's not the miners. Don Blankenship, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
That is all in for this.